Welcome to Partnerships for Profit, the podcast where we bring you inside the world of joint ventures, strategic partnerships, and powerful collaborations. Each episode, you'll dive into conversations with top entrepreneurs, visionaries, and business leaders, unlocking the secrets to building profitable relationships that drive growth and success. Whether you're looking to expand your network, find new referral partners, or scale your business, you're in the right place. Let's get started.
Hi, Sam.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going great. It's going great. So I'd like to invite everyone to join us on Partnerships for Profit as we welcome Sam Geller, Bay Area native and fearless founder of Geller Law. Sam is a top-rated criminal defense attorney known for his aggressive representation and impressive trial record, including multiple not guilty verdicts and high-profile case victories. From DUIs to serious felonies, Sam has defended countless clients across California, earning the respect of judges, prosecutors, and peers alike. So, Sam, wow.
Hey.
That's a fascinating start to your career.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Speaking of those early experiences, how did it feel to stand before a jury just 3 months in and walk out with a not guilty verdict?
You know, honestly, I was thinking about this and I was telling myself it felt like it was a lot to go through because I remember having my first day in court asking for just a new court date and my hands were shaking because I just wasn't sure what I'm doing. And then next thing you know, 90 days later or so, I'm presenting and, biting my nails and whatnot, appearing nervous, but telling myself, hey, you got to, calm down, you got to relax, you know what you're doing. You're practicing here. You have mentors who are guiding you and whatnot. I think that's when I realized that for me, that moment in time is when I felt alive. It's like exhilarating. Everything that you kind of learn and you practice, you put it in, you kind of put it out there and you see, what you can accomplish. And then to have, success come out and get a not guilty verdict, which by the way, was within 10 minutes of the jury going to deliberate.
Yeah.
It honestly just felt like you feel alive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Getting into that flow state, like getting so hyper focused where like you just have to be in the moment. Everything is guessing until you're in the moment,
Yeah, you live and you breathe your trial.
Yeah.
And nothing else matters in that moment.
My history is in theater. I always bring this up. And so when I'm going out on stage, I mean, you live and you breathe that. Then nothing else exists in that moment.
For sure.
So I at least understand that kind of focus, though I don't know how much of the pressure. I mean, I imagine you have a ton more pressure on you. And speaking of that kind of pressure cooker environment can really test someone. So has thriving under pressure always been part of your personality, or did the courtroom bring that out in you?
I think pressure is different when you're playing sports. It's one thing, it's win or lose. And there's pressure there, but you're not on some sort of stage, like the NBA finals or something. The pressure is very different. Not now that you think about it in hindsight, taking tests and whatnot and like fighting for yourself and fighting for your career and, trying to do well, taking the bar. That's a lot of pressure and preparation. Mm-hmm. There's a different pressure when like someone relies on you. Like you're no longer saying, hey, if I mess this up, it's something that I'm not going to achieve that I want. Sometimes the pressure is, hey, if I mess this up, this person's going to go to jail, right? Or I'm going to ruin this person's life. They're going to lose their livelihood, their job, their nursing license, whatever the case may be. I think that pressure is very different. And when you realize that, hey, someone's relying on you, you have someone's hands in your life, it brings out the best in you because someone had enough faith in you to give you that opportunity. And who are you to go and mess it up? You have to you got to stand up to the task and take care of what you can take care of. I don't know if I've always been great at it, but over the years you become better at, the pressure you deal with related to other people.
Mm-hmm. And of course, courtrooms can be unpredictable places.
Yeah.
Well, on the topic of unexpected events, what's the craziest thing that's ever happened to you mid-trial that almost threw you off your game?
The craziest thing, I would say, there's been a couple of them, but the craziest thing was that I'm sitting next to my client in a trial case, and as we're in trial, he has a heart attack. Right. So you kick into this different type of person, like you forget everything that's happening because the case is the case. the offense is the offense, but you have a person here who's really suffering from a medical condition now. And then you have to scramble, right? You forget everything that matters. You talk to the judge like he's another human being. The DA gets involved. The jurors are panicking. That's been the craziest thing in terms of just like really trying to change everything that you're focusing on in that moment. Is just like emergency saving efforts.
Yeah.
And then other things have been such as, some years ago, I had the pleasure of working on a really high profile case in the Bay Area where I had a witness who was trained, and he made some, some remarks and some answers that were really throwing me off and designed to. And now at that point I was like, you know what, screw this guy. So I asked some questions that were just highly inappropriate to let him know, like, I'm not gonna, back down to you.
Yeah.
Only to then be completely reprimanded by the judge, have everything be in the news, and then having to go, go in the chambers, and they try to throw you off your game. And for a bit it did, because you're young. And now you have this judge reprimanding you, and the news is there watching you. You're a little nervous moving forward, but again, you have to remember that you're fighting for someone else, and the reason why you're there is because they want you to fight for them, and they trust you to do so. And you have to do what you have to do, even if it means getting yourself in trouble sometimes.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's not about you.
Correct.
I mean, you are truly fighting for someone else.
Yeah, I mean, you have to have some decorum and obviously some respect for the court, and a lot of respect and decorum for the court. But there are times when everything is so much against you that you have to find a way to fight back.
Yeah. I'm still kind of in shock about this heart attack thing too.
Me too.
And the place where my brain goes is like, well, it's a courtroom. Like, I'm kind of surprised that we don't hear about this happening more often.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it happens. But again, at the end of the day, we all have a job to do, whether it's myself, the DA, the bailiff, the judge. And when someone's life is in like literal life is in jeopardy, and they're having an emergency, you sometimes just see the best in people. They want to make sure everything goes as smoothly as it can.
Wow.
The trial doesn't matter at that point.
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not. At that point, you think you're in survival mode maybe, but then you realize what survival mode really, really is.
Exactly.
So it sounds like you've had to think on your feet quite a bit. Can you share a specific time when that quick thinking completely turned a case around?
I one time had a case that was like a $4 million fraud case.
Ooh.
Where some of my clients stole $4 million from this employer. And there were so many things that were done wrong in relation to the investigation that we found one minor detail, and then I filed a motion on that. And I ended up realizing later that I filed an improper or wrong kind of motion, right? Because it just was like a new experience for me. And the judge started correcting the situation and saying, kind of what should have happened. And for me, I had to like think on my feet right away. I'm like, oh, that's kind of what I meant to do, right, Judge? So just not to seem dumb.
Yeah.
And then as the process changed, you sometimes have to really think on your feet and think, okay, I know the facts, but now what should this law be? Because you haven't researched it. And that was my process of thinking on my feet while the U.S. attorney is fighting against me, telling me that it's wrong. Realistically, we went from a 17-year prison offer to 3 months at home, and they got to keep all the money.
Oh,
and
wow.
literally just because you fake it till you make it at some point.
Yeah.
You put out there what you can, and the law and what it should be. And just thinking on your feet, allowed a huge win, in my opinion. I know some people might think, oh, that's wrong. Somebody kept $4 million. But if you told me who they took it from and what happened, it's not as offensive as it sounds.
Yeah.
So
I mean, and that's your job. I mean,
absolutely.
Everybody deserves to be, to be represented in court.
Yeah, for sure.
And I mean, it's the least of what we can do for, the people in our community. And I really believe in that. So speaking of that, I go to this, the world of criminal defense is often portrayed in a certain light. Thinking about public perception, what's one misconception people have about winning criminal defense cases?
I used to struggle with this and telling people this is what I do because it's frowned upon at times. what you realize over, a couple of years is that a lot of my clients are just like you and I, and people that we associate with who get in trouble. The number of people in my community who reach out, the secrets that I have to keep, of drama that happens in the world and within different circles that I'm at, that I'm a part of.
Mhm.
Um, there's a huge misconception that like, oh, this person's a criminal and you got him off. But what people don't really realize is that, with all due respect, with like, prosecuting agencies, for them sometimes it's a numbers game, and they try to punish as much as possible, and our job is
Yeah.
to prevent that.
Mhm.
The number of times that I've had, clients who committed just a minor offense or a first offense, maybe not minor, and they're
Mhm.
being thrown to the wolves. It's not. We're allowed to make mistakes. There are obviously some type of mistakes that are inexcusable. I'll agree to that, and I'm very comfortable in saying that. But a lot of the times, we're not always talking about the murders and the most heinous crimes, right? The
Mhm.
penal code is millions of pages long. Everything's a crime.
Mhm.
The real question is, you know, did this person intend to do it? Can they get their life back? Can they be rehabilitated? Sometimes winning isn't just not guilty, but it's, pointing the person in the right direction, getting them back on track. So sometimes winning just means that we're letting people get back into the community on better terms.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a major misconception.
Absolutely. And again, like if the least of us doesn't have representation, then like who are we as people, you
Correct.
know?
Correct.
So, navigating such high stakes situations must require a certain level of mental fortitude.
Yeah.
Do you have any personal rituals or habits you rely on to keep calm before walking into a big trial? Or
I don't really think I try to keep calm. I this
yeah,
might be an
okay, that's my
unpopular.
favorite thing. Like,
Yeah.
when I'm working with students and they're about to
Yeah.
go on stage and they're nervous, what do I do if I'm nervous? I'm like, if you're not nervous, I don't want to go on stage with you.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
like that means it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
It
this
matter.
might sound like an unpopular opinion in today's world, but I grew up on Eminem and just being angry about things. So, like, you'll see me in like literally, if you had a video camera of me driving to court for like some major hearing, I will literally be blasting my favorite Eminem songs and just like
Oh
getting
yeah,
myself worked up, where I
yeah,
just feel like the world is now against me.
yeah.
Um, I have to sometimes check myself and just be like, look, you can't go into court screaming at everybody. That doesn't present well either. But you also can't go in there nonchalant, not caring. You're supposed to care. You're supposed to show emotion.
Mhm.
So for me, I genuinely listen to Eminem songs
Wow.
till this day.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I mean, anything that like, I mean, do you have any personal rituals or habits that keep you sane that aren't related to trial? It's just something you do regularly?
Yeah, I mean, I obviously I work out, I ride my bike.
Yeah.
I have recently started when I have, when you get older and you start in your practice and you start taking on much more serious cases,
Mhm.
there are times that the pressure really gets to you.
Yeah.
Um, for me, just talking to some people, having like a business coach,
Mhm.
focusing on approaching my life from like, hey, what it is that I have versus what I want to have.
Yeah.
Maybe just being, showing gratitude for what you do. Like, I know it's like a cliche thing to say,
Mhm.
but like last week I had a very stressful situation, and
Mhm.
like I thought something was going to just, go to hell and of
Mhm.
certain things, and I had to just remind myself like, hey, all these things that are happening that are good. Like I try to actually like practice that now versus just talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's beautiful.
That's been a thing for
Um,
me.
yeah. So, beyond the courtroom battles, relationships and negotiations often play a crucial role. On
Yeah.
that note, have you ever used your goodwill with judges and prosecutors to negotiate a deal that seemed impossible?
I think so. I don't know about impossible. I think in the beginning, when no one knows you,
Mhm.
you don't really know what a case is worth, and you just go out there and you ask for the craziest things, and then
Yeah.
over time you realize like, oh, that's not happening, right?
Mhm.
But I think I would hope so. If somebody's watching this, that I developed a reputation where people know that I'm not like BSing them, and I just call things like they are.
Yeah.
But when I say like, hey, this is what I think happened, and this is where I think it's wrong, or I, represented some people where like I needed to use my relationship with people. I mean, listen, we all know each other, at the end of the
Mhm.
day. I have definitely done that, but in a respectable manner,
Yeah.
where, you don't want to overstep certain things, but there are certain situations where I can tell you that some attorneys can get better resolutions for cases than others just because they're not known.
Yeah.
And the more that you abuse that, the worse it becomes. But there are certain cases where like they mean so much that you say, hey, listen, that I'm an honest guy, and like we've
Mhm.
had this relationship in the past, that it can go a long way at times. So I think the answer is yes.
Yeah. And, with a certain level of discernment and maturity,
Correct. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
for sure.
So, some cases naturally attract more attention than others. What's the most high stakes or media crazy case you've ever worked out on? Well, I mean,
I mean, they're in the news, so
there's
it's not
many
like,
details that yeah,
yeah.
feel comfortable
So
sharing.
some years ago here in California, we had a very horrible tragedy
Mhm.
where a very large number of partygoers went to a place called Ghost Ship,
Mhm.
and a fire broke out, and a lot of people who are very young people, unfortunately,
Ooh.
suffered and passed away. Um, I I had the pleasure of working on that case and representing one of the defendants, and that was my introduction to understanding that what is said in court is rhetoric A, and what is said in the news is a completely different rhetoric.
Yeah.
You could say that this pen is blue, but they'll say this pen is red, just because it serves a purpose for clickbait, for news media, for whatever they want to portray. And
Wow.
you realize that sometimes you're really fighting the media,
Yeah.
and you can't mince your words, and you
Mhm.
have to say things in very short term so that it cannot even be misinterpreted, right?
Yeah.
And then last year we had another horrible tragedy in the Bay Area where an entire family was killed while waiting at a bus stop by a lady by a lady in a car that was driving.
Oh, okay.
Um, that case is still pending, and
Mhm.
I don't want to talk too much about it, but just to kind of be in that moment and understand like the severity of the situation, be able to
Yeah.
navigate that within the news media while also navigating in court, managing expectations of what people expect you to say, but also fighting for your client,
Mhm.
managing expectations for your client. It's a really tough position to be in.
I
Um,
can't imagine. I mean,
and it like took over this
mhm.
community for like a couple of weeks. And you're almost like part of enemy number one to some degree,
Mhm.
but because people don't really understand what's happening behind the scenes in court,
Yeah.
and there's not a lot of details, and the news will say what the news needs to say in order to kind of promote their narrative.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can get too much into the nitty gritty of things, but those are the two cases where I represented really high profile individuals in really high profile cases.
Mhm.
Um, your life is taken over by this. Like
Absolutely.
the number of people calling you asking for quotes, for statements, and you got to be careful,
Mhm.
because you don't want to offend anybody at the same time, but you also want to do your best right for your client.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, it's really incredible work that you do.
Appreciate that.
So given your real world experience, you probably have a unique perspective on how law is depicted in popular culture. And I feel like that's come up a few times as we've been speaking.
Yeah.
How accurate would you say those courtroom TV shows are compared to the real thing?
I don't think they're very accurate. I think
Yeah.
the way that investigations are done with like the defendants being involved and being in judges' chambers and whatnot, that doesn't happen. There has been one show that I've seen in my life that I was like, okay, this makes sense. It's called The Night of. It was
Oh, I
on
saw
it
that.
was on HBO some years
Yeah.
ago,
Okay.
and I think what really got me is that people think about what you go through when you're dealing with the case.
Hmm.
People forget that like if you win the case and you're back in your community, the impact it has on you afterwards, how you're judged, how your reputation precedes you. and how your doors of opportunities are closed for you just because of something, and you were, say, wrongfully accused, right? It doesn't matter for you to shake that image. You were already, people already know you for it, and they think where there's smoke, there's fire. But the way that case, the way that show depicted what happens during a criminal case and to people who deal with it, I think was the one that resonated with me most. Everything else, the law and orders and whatever else is out there, that doesn't do much for me.
Yeah. Have you ever experienced, I mean, and this is just as, a criminal defense attorney, have you ever experienced any sort of negative feedback, like from, people who knew that you were the attorney doing the thing?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. People think, people just ask you questions like, how do you defend criminals?
Wow.
When I had these high profile cases, I got hate mail.
Wow.
Like just people writing you notes, sending it to your literally to your mailbox. I've had people message me about like knowing my whereabouts and whatnot. It's unfortunate, but it's kind of part of the gig. And
yeah.
I think a lot of the people who you then have an opportunity to educate, promote that narrative that you tell them.
Yeah.
Because you try to, not that you try, you are reasonable in your job and in your career, and that gets depicted through the way that you speak about it.
Absolutely.
And you educate people what you really do, right? It's not that every time you're just finding some technicality, getting people off. That's why the conviction rates are what they are. They're like 90-something%. If it wasn't for people like myself, the people that are just like myself who get in trouble would be a lot more punished and have a lot more consequences. So sometimes our job is to deal with the collateral consequences while minimizing, the direct criminal consequences.
Absolutely.
And like in today's world with, what's happening with immigration, that's a really huge issue in California, where, a lot of people are accused of an offense that a citizen would not be deported for, right? They have lives here and whatnot. And not to get into the discussion of immigration turn as political, but they are much more heavily impacted by even the smallest cases than someone who, and I know the arguments that can be made for that and whatnot, but again, we're not getting into that. But
no, we're not.
There's a lot of things that can impact someone, just not in the criminal case, whether it's child care related, child custody, professional licensing, immigration, whatever. There's a lot of things that go on.
Absolutely. It's a big world out there.
Yeah.
So finally, reflecting on all of your experiences, there are likely people facing incredibly difficult situations. What's one piece of advice you'd give to someone who feels like their situation is hopeless?
I tell this to everyone that comes through my door when we have this conversation. Control what you can. There's certain things that are out of your control. What happened, and all you can do is take more positive steps forward, and only control what you can. Like something will play out, the cards will fall into their place, but don't let how you feel now, define who you are. Don't let what happened define your entire life before and after. This is your first mistake. All you can really do is control what you can, and everything else will kind of take care of itself.
Wow. And I mean, we're human beings. We're allowed to make mistakes. And, it is my personal belief that every single person deserves the right to a fair trial.
Absolutely.
And you were working, you're doing, as some would say, God's work for the system. So
some would say, yeah.
Yes, as some would say. So Sam, thank you so much for meeting with us today. As I'm just taking a few notes as we go here, and I love that you talk about what you do as though it's like some sort of devotional practice, and that another theme you brought up was just this surviving under the pressure of fighting for others.
Yeah.
And so thank you for what you do.
Absolutely.
And
thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And that'll be all for us today on Partnerships for Profit with Sam Geller.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Partnerships for Profit. We hope you've gained valuable insights on how to form profitable partnerships and take your business to the next level. Be sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. Got a partnership story to share or someone you'd like to see featured on the show? Reach out to us. Until next time, keep building those partnerships for profit.